Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Lando Norris with a stunning pole position for the Dutch Grand Prix, meaning Max Verstappen, if he wants to win his home race for the fourth time in a row, will have to do so not from the front of the field. The big surprises though, no doubt Mercedes. We knew Ferrari weren't going to be very good, but even George Russell, who did make it to Q3, was significantly off the pace of Norris, and Lewis Hamilton couldn't even make it out of Q2, especially after all the drama with Sergio Perez that happened earlier on in the session. Lots of reaction today, very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. This, of course, being the crash of Logan Sargent, we shall get to here over the coming minutes. Before we get there, a couple of updates around the world of Formula 1. Firstly, this on Haas, right? We saw the talk yesterday that Haas have been under threat of Uralkali getting their assets seized because they've not paid back this Russian oil sponsor that sponsored them for quite some time and effectively got them through the pandemic in many ways. Apparently, though, that deal is now done. The Dutch authorities came in and said, yeah, you've got to pay these guys. And obviously, there's a bit of controversy about that in the first place. Apparently, they've now done so, and therefore they will be allowed to race at Monza because they will be allowed to actually take their car and parts of the machinery and all this out of the country, which was not otherwise going to be the case. Of course, yesterday we saw that Jack Doohan was confirmed as the new driver for Alpine alongside Pierre Gasly for next season. This was interesting just because Mick Schumacher did a test, we believe, I'm pretty sure this is like confirmed in public, alongside Jack Doohan a little while ago now, and eventually they chose Doohan in some sense over Mick Schumacher. So there might have been some expectation they could have informed Mick to say, hey, you know, we've decided to go this other route. But apparently Mick only found out the same time the rest of us did, which, you know, some people are reading that as like, well, whatever, this is sport. Some people are saying it's disrespectful. Obviously, there's a debate on it. I guess on one level, keeping him in the dark kind of means that the WEC team that he's a part of, he's kind of less likely to leave and go elsewhere. So I'm sure there was some weird politics in play. This was very interesting, though, as well from Toto Wolff. We saw that yesterday he slipped up and confirmed that the driver lineup next year will be Russell and Antonelli. But he actually did say that it's not over for Max yet. I mean, the level of seduction here we're talking about is weapons grade. But look, Toto's trying his best to get Max to the team, and maybe he's going to be successful in doing so. But it's not going to happen next year. Toto has a feeling that their paths will cross at some point. Maybe 2026, maybe later. That's what he's talking about. And he even talks about how the relationship with Max, he feels like he might have been able to get the deal done now, but it wasn't as smooth as it might have been at their discussions this season because of what happened back in 2021. This is kind of crazy. I just wanted to go through it, but he talks about how they had a very good relationship with Max. Of course, he could never join Mercedes initially. Toto wasn't able to get him a drive because they had Hamilton and Rosberg. So Helmut Marko and Red Bull were, because they could put him in the Toro Rosso and quite quickly into the Red Bull. And Toto says, I made a mistake after Silverstone 2021. Of course, they had that crash, and obviously it was very heated from both sides at that point. Toto was angry about the whole situation, and after Paul Monaghan from Red Bull said that Max was fine, Toto didn't follow it up further. But at that point, I guess he was in relatively regular communication with Jos Verstappen, Max's father, and he says in hindsight he should have called Jos and said, look, you know, tough day, is Max all right after the big crash and everything like that, and kind of chilled it out a bit. But, you know, Toto says that he relied on information, that he was okay, and he was okay. I mean, we believe he had some sort of concussion, though, actually, because his vision in the later half of the season was apparently giving Max problems. But, you know, Toto says in hindsight, had he called Jos and kind of calmed the moment, as it were, after that very dramatic day at Silverstone a few years ago now, maybe the relationship with Jos would have been better, the relationship with Max would have been better, such that that deal could have been done for next season in 2025 for Max to join, rather than, you know, the Verstappen camp holding off and not being so sure Mercedes is the right option, maybe not fully trusting Toto Wolff or whatever the case might be. So I thought that was very interesting. I guess Max is still potentially an option for 2026. We know that there's some sort of performance contract as well, like if the Red Bull isn't so good next year, Max is going to be able to walk away from his contract. Toto would love to have him, so I thought the whole situation is kind of fascinating, but this was another big talking point of the day. Logan Sargent in the wall, and look, there's no excuses for this one. The grass is wet. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Why are we on the grass? Why have we got two tyres on the grass? It's an error that you don't see many drivers making, certainly not at this level, and and, every single time Sargent hits the track, he gives me a reason to want him no longer to be in the sport, respectfully. So, he's going to be gone in a few races' time. He gets the rest of the season, right? We thought that maybe Antonelli would come in instead, but Mercedes are convinced that he's the man anyway, so that's not necessarily going to matter. And then Sargent spun out and was quickly in the wall. I mean, big impact, right? Like, the good thing about this impact, okay, it's not good in some ways, it's kind of spectacular, but the more parts you see flying off, the more protection for the driver. I think people often conflate that, right? They see the car explode and they think, wow, that's like terrible. There must have been a really impactful crash, which is true, but also all of that energy is being dissipated because the car's basically exploded. If the car didn't explode and it just hit the wall and stayed in one piece, that means a lot of the energy is going through the driver, right? So it goes to show the leaps and bounds that have been made in safety, but also completely annihilated the car. So yeah, good luck, of course, to Williams getting this one back together. Here's Oscar Piastri on the left driving past, and the car actually quite quickly caught fire as well, as we saw at the start of the video. So Sargent gets out and, thankfully he was fine. It's kind of incredible that he was fine for an impact that big, but it was his mistake at the end of the day. You could see the Williams mechanics being like, oh my god, this guy, he's done it again. And I can't imagine they were so happy about it. This pick though does kind of go hard, so he got that one. Might be his most legendary moment in the sport, actually. Goes pretty hard, not gonna lie. So I guess every cloud has a silver lining, right? But yeah, it's obviously only a matter of time until Sargent's gone, and they weren't able to repair the car in time for him to get into qualifying, which is no surprise. Like, the chassis was marginally destroyed, well, substantially destroyed. The engine was pretty damaged, the gearbox was destroyed. So yeah, no chance really to recover that car for qualifying. We'll see what they can come up with for tomorrow, because Albon, with the new upgrades that Williams have brought, very, very competitive today, as we'll get into. This was the end of the practice session, and yeah, because there was a red flag for like 50 minutes, eventually when they did get back on track, there was only really one lap or so done, and it was wet conditions, of course. We saw Hamilton and Verstappen like basically racing each other on the final lap, so they weren't going fast at all, and it was Gasly, Magnussen and Bottas. Three polar bears have found themselves in Arlington, Texas, and they were obviously kind of mind-blown at that one. There was also this drama as well. I don't know if you guys really think this is a big deal. I felt like there was a bit of overreaction here, to be honest. But this is a Max Verstappen classic, isn't it? So they're coming out of the pits to try and get a flying lap in. They want to ensure they can get rounds back before the checkered flag falls. So Max overtakes Piastri and then overtakes Russell on the outside. Now, you're not allowed to cross this white line, and I'm pretty sure that Max does cross it. He definitely touches it. I'm not sure if one wheel was completely over the line or not, but, this probably should be some sort of a fine. It's just Max does this stuff and gets away with it, and people are, I think, annoyed that he gets away with this stuff. It's a bit cheeky, it's probably unnecessary, but it's just Max Verstappen at the end of the day. This is the type of stuff that he does. And unless they're going to put a rule in place to stop him doing it, he's going to keep doing it. And some people are going to love him for it, some people are going to hate him for it. It is what it is. But, I'm not really sure that stewards cared too much about this, to be fair. Williams, as I said, confirmed that, yeah, we're assessing the chassis. It currently looks okay, but yeah, they couldn't make it work in time, which was really no surprise. So qualifying gets underway, and this weekend I was expecting to be kind of like a three-horse fight for pole position between the McLarens, Max, and then the Mercedes, right? That was my expectation. McLaren, I thought, were probably favoured, especially in the dry conditions. If it rains today, I would have said that Verstappen might have been my favourite for pole, just because the Red Bull have been running a higher downforce version. It seems like in Spa and now here as well, the Red Bull are finding their car performance a bit better on the higher downforce. Now, they still have a lot of understeer in the car, and they've really tried to dial that out today, and it doesn't seem to be helping. And of course, this still raises questions. I mean, watching some of Verstappen's onboards today, the amount of understeer he was getting through the second sector, it's like, that's understeer the car wasn't really getting last year, and it raises again the questions on the asymmetric braking, right? Because that's one of the main benefits of asymmetric braking, is the turning through the corner and eliminating understeer at times. Now, Red Bull, especially in Verstappen's final run, were able to dial some of that out of the car, but it was definitely a problem for them this weekend, and it seems like they are preferring now a higher downforce setup where they actually lose time on the straights, Red Bull, in order to compensate compensate for that. And that might have worked very well today had it rained, because higher downforce gives you a substantial advantage there, as we saw back in Spa. But it didn't rain, and it also can mean that from a straight line perspective, you can be more vulnerable in a race condition, but yet you're going to, prepare your tyres better, and you're going to preserve your tyres better over the course of race distance. So there's obviously pros and cons with what Red Bull, it seems, are doing, but this was the start of Q1, and I think this was the mainly confusing thing about today's Mercedes, is that early doors, it looked very competitive. Like Q1, Russell was actually struggling. Russell was the one struggling with the car, struggling with oversteer, struggling with understeer, just struggling with the balance of the car through the corners, certainly through the middle sector. But Hamilton was 7 tenths up, 1:11.3, right there with Norris, right there with Piastri, and, it looked like, yeah, the Mercedes, the McLarens, they're going to be fighting for the pole. But all of a sudden, Hamilton started to have the issues that Russell had, and it kind of went the other way around, and the car just wasn't competitive enough, right? So it's very interesting. Now, the big drama of Q1 was Hamilton versus Perez, and as Perez says, what's this idiot doing? He was in the way. Hamilton's like, I was well out of his way, and the stewards have had to look into this. So it was definitely a very interesting moment, a difficult one for Hamilton to actually do anything about. He attempted to avoid the situation. Was he in the way? Yes. He just got out of the way, I think, of a Haas. Then he comes around the next corner, and then he goes all the way to the far left-hand side. Perez obviously takes the racing line. But Hamilton, I mean, realistically, unless he stopped the car, he was always going to be on the racing line on the exit. So I think it was just unfortunate, really, for both parties. But understandably, Perez was annoyed, because it meant that he had to do another run to get through, which he did successfully and went P1 in the end, but he wasted another set of soft tyres to do so. And, of course, this was the key moment that even Hamilton was talking about later on that affected the preparation for the rest of his time, really. This was the angle through the corner, where if Perez very much takes to the inside of the corner, he will be fine and avoid Hamilton. But it just, the racing line ended up being where Hamilton was, but it's like, he can't stop the car, he can't drive off the track, there's only so much that can be done. So a difficult set of circumstances, really. As I'm recording this, the stewards are yet to make a decision as to whether Hamilton's going to get a 3-place penalty or not. The reality is it's not massively going to affect his chances for tomorrow's race, at least of getting a podium, because that is highly unlikely anyway, especially around a place like this. So then Russell is on the radio saying, I don't know what's going on, I've got no grip on this car, I'm sliding all over the shop, like, what's going on? He was P9, half a second behind Hamilton. So it was just very confusing today how, again, the Mercedes, yes, they brought this new floor, which they used in Spa, but it still seems like there's something they're failing to understand, because the McLaren is like always there, right? Like, it's very, very rare that you'll find a session where Lando at least isn't in the fight for pole right now. And today, Mercedes, despite seemingly having the pace as the session went on, just didn't really manage to execute on that. Whether it's tyres, whether it's setup, or something or another, there's clearly something still Mercedes are not understanding. And even Toto Wolff said coming into the weekend, he's not expecting to fight for wins every weekend, and maybe here will not be one of those occasions. But it kind of looked like it could be until today, when things started to go wrong. So in the end, Perez goes fastest in Q1. Russell then does put in a good lap in the end. So clearly Mercedes and Russell figured out something. And then Q2 was fascinating, right? Obviously Checo was annoyed on the radio. We've discussed that in some detail. The Ferraris, by the way, terrible. I mean, they ended today 9 tenths off pole position. It was honestly looking slow for Sainz and Leclerc to even get into Q3. And in the end, Sainz didn't, right? He obviously, after what happened on Friday with the gearbox issue, didn't get as much running as he would have liked. That was unfortunate. And Leclerc's onboard looked pretty good. Like, Leclerc clearly had some pace. He was throwing the car in. He was doing the Leclerc magic that we see. The car's just slow. And it was a concern I had with Ferrari at the start of the season. I didn't think they were aggressive enough with their concepts personally. And, initially it seemed like, wow, Ferrari have done a great job. They were closest to Red Bull, but clearly they've taken some steps backwards. And in many ways, they've simply not been able to, maybe with their concept and the ceiling of this concept, to take enough steps forward. So that's a concern for them. Hamilton was then on the radio asking the team, like, that lap wasn't great. I was, good few tenths off Russell. What's going on with the tyre temperatures? Of course, the same issue that he complained about earlier in the season. And Bono says, like, we're basically the same temps as George, so if you're experiencing issues, it's something else clearly going on. And then we get these pictures of Toto Wolff, and I think this is Bono's reaction to Lewis Hamilton. Now, look, he's still the only driver this season to have won more than one race, apart from Max Verstappen, but obviously his qualifying hasn't been great, and today was another example. So Hamilton ends up he wasn't, far off, but he was too far off. I mean, he was a 10th off Alonso in the end, ending with a 1:10.9. Sainz as well was out in that part of qualifying. Great lap from Gasly to get through. Even Verstappen wasn't, miles away from getting knocked out. Had some of the other guys behind improved further. Albon, though, with a great lap to get himself in. He was very close to P6 today. Super commendable, but it was clearly still at this point the McLarens as the cars to beat. So, yeah, what an effort from Albon, and also Hamilton's record, because his qualifying has been much better over the last few rounds. But a tough one today, especially, I imagine, considering how much he would have loved to have won this Grand Prix in front of Verstappen's home crowd. But it's obviously a massive outside chance that happens at this point. So Q3 gets underway, and the first laps were pretty much what we might have expected. Norris a 1:10.0, Piastri a 10th behind, Verstappen a 10th and a half down, and then, Russell was about 4-5 tenths back, right? So that is, to be honest, where the Mercedes was today. And it's, yes, their car's improved, but it's a similar thing to what we've seen from them at the start of the season, whereby for whatever reason in Q3 and on the Saturday, they just have nowhere near the pace of the front runners. Maybe part of that is just their car not really suiting this track so well. I think that's probably part of it. But also the McLaren have brought some upgrades and they were just obscenely good. This, today, the McLaren is so good, like genuinely to watch the onboards. It's so efficient, it's so planted, it's so good through every corner complex. Like, that McLaren is the strongest package right now. And in Lando Norris's hands, he put in a 1:09.6, a mega lap, 3.5 tenths on max around his home track, around a short track at that. Like, that is mesmerizing stuff. Piastri, he will be pretty gutted here because he had a good chance here to get P2. I think Norris will also be gutted for Piastri because we know that Norris's record on lap 1 is not the best. And I don't know what Verstappen is going to try into turn 1, but I'm sure it's going to be something tomorrow because Max is not going to want to let Norris get away, especially given Norris's record leading into lap 1. When he's led a Grand Prix from pole, he's not led the first lap at all. So, maybe tomorrow that will change. Obviously, the run to turn 1 is very short compared to some other tracks. But if Piastri was P2, then it puts McLaren with a bit of a safety buffer. But it's not because Piastri didn't have the greatest lap. Russell put a great lap in, to be fair, to go 4th. Perez was 7.5 tenths down on Norris, 4 tenths down on Max. But that's not actually too bad for Perez in some ways, ending up P5. Leclerc 9 tenths off. And, we've not really seen, on some level, gaps like this for some time. Alonso's lap, I thought, was really good. Like, watching it, I thought he did a great job in the Aston, and he was a second off Norris. Like, that just goes to show, even on this short track, how much performance delta there can still be in these cars. So it seems like the issue here for Mercedes is tyre temperature related on some level. Hamilton talks about how after the moment with Checo, it was like a domino effect. Not only did his own, kind of like headspace get rocked on some level, which is, I don't know, sounds like a bit of an excuse to me, but obviously the car wasn't where he wanted it to be anyway, because Russell was also struggling as well. Says the balance got more and more snappy, more oversteery, just terrible. And, I think it's tyre temperature related, right? Because this is what Toto says, that lots of understeer to snap oversteer to you lose the temperature threshold, got no performance. I think even Hamilton said on his good lap earlier on, the tyres were like seriously overheating, and that was what was giving in the problems, right? So it's very interesting to see this because Mercedes talked about this earlier in the season, their tyre temperature problems and not getting it into the right window. Today they certainly didn't, certainly not with Hamilton, and Hamilton basically says, yeah, the weekend's done, I'll see you next week type thing for Monza. So, this is kind of what Hamilton will usually get like after he's had a bad session. He'll be pretty emotionally down, and then tomorrow he'll be back and trying to do his best. And, as of recording, I don't know whether he's going to start 12th or 15th based on the potential penalty that may or may not come through. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comment section below. But the big question really of tomorrow is, can Norris execute? Because on the pace advantage today, and on the pace advantage we saw in FP2 in terms of race pace, which was similar to Max, but probably slightly faster, Norris should be winning tomorrow's Grand Prix. And if he doesn't, barring no mechanical or other, drama-related issues, there will be serious questions raised. So very much enjoyed to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.